Hello, YouTube. I'm here today working on a Husky Haul Master utility vehicle, a little side-by-side utility vehicle. This is going to be a video that is only going to be for a few people because I'm sure there's not a lot of people that have these things anymore. I don't even know who made them. If somebody knows who made these things and sold these back in the day, leave me a message. I would love to know, was it Tractor Supply or Walmart or, who the heck sold these things? Anyway, there's not many of them out there, and they're really hard to find parts for, which is a shame because it's a very basic little vehicle. It's like a golf cart, but it runs on a lawnmower engine, and so it's very very basic. It's pretty easy to work on. The only problem is the parts are impossible to find. That I don't even know uh, you know, who made them to begin with. I mean, they're impossible to find. So the point of this video, I'm going to be doing a little bit of work on mine, and I'm also going to give you parts lists and show you, if you have one of these, where you can source some of these parts from. Because again, if you've got one, and if you're like me, you know that they're just nowhere to be found. So I'm going to show you in this video where you can find parts to rebuild all of the major main components of this little utility vehicle, because it's actually a really well running little vehicle when it's running. So let me move on. I'll show you some of the parts, and I'll show you what I'm doing to rebuild mine.
Hey YouTube, what's going on? So here's what I'm working on. This is my Husky Haul Master here, and well, there's a lot going on here. The first thing let me say about this thing is the motor is extremely basic. Okay, it runs off of a belt drive, and the motor I've got down in there, that's just a little Harbor Freight replacement engine. So that's the first thing I love about these things is, if the motor goes out, very easily replaced by a replacement, that you can find at Harbor Freight for, maybe a couple $100, I think is what I paid for that. Apart from that, you've got the CVT transmission there, forward, reverse, and that I will show you a screenshot. I was trying to replace that. As I thought I was having a little bit of problems with it. Maybe yes, maybe no. We're going to find out after I piece this thing back together. But it looks like a John Deere Gator transmission will fit in this thing. So, I'll give you the link to that. You'll be able to see. This is the kind of transmission I believe it would fit. It's out of a John Deere Gator 600, 622. I tried to buy one on eBay, but the guy on eBay marked it as shipped, but never actually shipped it. He was waiting on his funds to be released, but eBay policy is not to release the funds until the product is actually delivered, which he couldn't seem to comprehend, so he kind of reneged on our deal. Turned out just as well, because it turned out that my transmission was not the problem anyway. But don't deal with this seller if you see them, because they're very unreliable. But basically, you see the way the power drive is, there's a clutch there. This is run off of centrifugal force. As the engine speeds up, that clutch will narrow its diameter and start driving that belt. And the belt goes back to the rear, which also is type of a centrifugal drive type of a clutch. It's called a CVT. You see these things on go-karts sometimes. And as the load increases, it's kind of hard for me to explain, but you see there's like a spring mechanism on the back, and as the load increases, it will expand or narrow or whatever it needs to do to. Between the two of them, there's a combination of power going out and power required, and it's actually a very effective little system. I really like it. You don't go real fast in this thing. I think top speed is about 12 miles an hour, but you could go up a pretty steep grade hauling a load in the back of it, full of logs or whatever you might have, and there's enough power to get you up the hill with that little lawnmower engine. So I'm going to be replacing both of these clutches on it. They've both given me problems in the past. I've had to pull that one apart. Sometimes you can pull these apart and clean them and kind of rebuild them. But I've got a new one. This one here, as you can see, it has like little rubber bumpers on it. There's one little rubber bumper here. Down here, that one just came off of it, and I kind of rigged something up, you see, with a Phillips head screw to keep it from coming apart, because what'll happen is when those rubber bumpers come off, that spring will just kind of spring out of it and you get no use out of it. So I went ahead and got two new ones. I'll give you the parts description on those so you know how to get those as well if you're working on this thing. And then lastly, as we come over to this side, you see I've got this whole thing tore apart, okay? When I change that, I'm going to have to going to have to take the transmission case, move it this way to be able to get that off. There, because of where that's located with the brake down in there, there's just no way, there's no clearance to get this off unless you move the whole thing backwards this way. So I'm going to be taking that out in a minute. That's why I've got my forward reverse disconnected. That's what this is right here. That's your, that just comes out by a cotter pin. That's forward reverse. So you pull that out, and then the way to take this loose is there's a bolt up top here. There's one way down at the bottom, down in that corner on that same bracket. So there's that. And then there's a bolt here, and again down there, and there's this bolt here. So there's, take it from this view. Basically, there's this bracket up here that holds it in, and then there's this bracket that goes up and down that holds it in. You loose all that stuff, you could slide it backwards. I'll show you doing it in just a minute. The other thing is, with mine, where the bearing goes, this is actually removable. I did this a while back because I had to change that bearing, and so I kind of modified it. If you have one of these, unfortunately, yours probably won't come out. But see, I can take mine out. Gives me a little bit more clearance to work in there, and like I said, I did that so that I could change that bearing a little bit easier on the time that I had to do it. So I'll show you all the parts, and like I said, I'll give you parts descriptions. On the bearings, they are, can't remember the outside, everything is 1 inch diameter. The shafts, everything, these are all 1 inch diameter. On the outside, I'm wanting to say, I'll get a mic and mic it out and let you know, but it's probably 2 inches or 3. So here's the other issue I've got going on. That was the old output shaft that I pulled out of it. And the biggest problem, as you can see, is the spline end was really, really badly buggered up, and it just was not catching the drive. I tried to kind of, rig it by doing some welding and stuff, just was not good enough. So that's why this thing failed in the very beginning. And this thing, the problem was that it was so rusted in and so corroded that I couldn't get the components apart. So I actually, if you notice, I had to cut it apart in several different spots with my Sawzall. So I cut it all apart, and then I just sort of tack welded it all back together just so I could get some measurements off of it. And as you can see, I've got a new shaft. This is just a 12-inch shaft. It's a 15 spline shaft. I'll show you the link for that. Had to do a little machine work on it. Some of it I did myself, some of it I farmed out. The keyway, I had a machine shop actually put the keyway in it for me. That cost me about $200. So if you're wanting to do something like this, now you have some idea what it's going to cost. But so there's a shaft. I'll give you the link for that. There's a 15 spline coupler. It goes right through. I drilled out 2 1/4-inch holes and put a couple of 1/4-inch, Allen head set screws in there. That'll make it a little bit more sturdy. Then we've got the new CVT, drive and final drive. Those are there. I'll show you how to get those. And I've got some new brake components to go back on the shaft. There's a little 4-inch drum brake, which is your emergency brake, and there's an 8-inch disc brake. So let me go ahead and get started, and I'll start showing you how all this stuff goes together in case you've got a project like this that you want to try. So again, first thing I'm going to do, going to loosen up this bolt here. Just pull that brace up and out of the way. Put that bolt back in there to hold it. I've already loosened this bottom bolt. Take it right out. That's coming out of that bottom piece. We're going to loosen up this other bottom bolt down here. Trying to do everything where I can show you what I'm doing. Maybe not getting so much in the way of the camera. Okay. Loosen this top bolt. Now, I don't know if you can see this or not, but on this other side, just below the final drive, there's another rod that is like a linkage rod that comes off of here. That is for that's for the differential lock. So I'm going to have to loosen that as well, and then I'll support it and try to move this whole thing backwards so that I can slip the new final drive on there. I'll show you when it's done. Okay, so as you can see, I got the new final drive clutch in there. Just a tip, by the way, I didn't mention it, but support that thing by a jack. You know, I've got a little floor jack holding it underneath while you're working with it. It's not super heavy, but it's not super light either. And, you know, to motion it around and try to get that clutch off and everything, you really don't want to have to try to, you know, just hold it with one hand and work with the other. So just support it with a jack. It makes life a lot easier. Also, just another little pro tip. Even though I've got a concrete floor in my garage, I keep a yoga mat for when I have to crawl around on the concrete. You know, I've got old knees, and whether you're laying on the concrete, you know, or kneeling, that little yoga mat will really cause you to thank yourself for doing it. So anyway, got that part of it done. I'm just going to go ahead and tighten the bolts back up. Again, bolts on this first piece of angle iron. I've got this bolt here, one more below, and I've got two going through. You know, it actually goes through the transmission case into the angle iron, one here, one down there at the bottom, and that one in the angle iron on the bottom too. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten those up. I already connected my forward reverse linkage and I reconnected the differential on the other side. Finish that up and we'll get back to you. Just a couple more things I failed to mention to you. First of all, don't forget to tighten up your, you know, this top brace, little cross brace strap. Don't forget to tighten those back up. And when I put this back together, I forgot to show you, over on this side here, there's actually a little bearing that mounts, and there's just one bolt. Let's see if I can show it back there, 9/16. Most of this stuff is 9/16 or ½ inch. So you'll have to reinstall that. Of course, if you were taking it apart for the first time, you would know that it was there. And I don't know if you could see it down in here or not, but I used to have a real problem with slippage on this thing where this would slip off the shaft. So I've actually got down in here, I've got a small, if I can rotate it where you can see it a little bit better. I've got a small hose clamp that I put on mine. There it is, in between, just to clamp to the shaft to keep this thing from traveling so much. But we'll see how it works. This is actually a slightly smaller diameter than the old one, so I'm curious to see how it's going to perform. I think power-wise it'll be fine. It just may mean less speed. There may be a possibility that it goes slower than it ever did, which it never went all that fast to begin with, but I don't really care. As long as I can get around the yard and move things around, that's all I really care. So that part of it is done. I'm going to get back to it tomorrow and start working on putting this shaft back together. And again, I'll keep on showing you parts so that if you have one of these, you could do it yourself. And if you've got one of these, I sure wish you'd leave me a comment. Tell me where you got it, how long you've had it. These machines are kind of obscure. You don't find them around too much. So I'd love to know where you got it and how long you've had it. So anyway, We'll be back to it tomorrow. Okay, so I'm going to start putting this shaft back together, but I noticed there's going to be a problem, so I'm going to show you what that is if you choose to do something like this on your machine. So first of all, the little brake drum, got to kind of slide it in there like that, okay? And then the brake band, you have to kind of take this, move that off to the side like that, start feeding the brake band up through it. You'll have to kind of like circle it around a little bit because it doesn't quite fit. So, just kind of fiddle with it until you get it up in there. Okay, then you get that up in there. These two go up in here, okay? And there's a couple of pins. So you're going to have, basically what happens, you've got this pin, solid pin over on this end. The cable's going to pass through it. Then you're going to have this pin, which has the adjustable Allen key that locks the cable in. That's going to go up through this end. Okay. Now here's the problem. I think this is because this is an aftermarket part, but that doesn't really even leave you enough room to get that drum in there. It's too tight. Okay. So what I'm going to do to have to modify this is, I think I'm just going to cut this end of the bracket off so that this can slide back a little bit more, giving it a little bit more room. I don't want to fool with this end, and here's the reason why. The way this will be assembled, you'll have the cable that'll go through here, and every time you want to pull on the emergency brake, the cable's going to pull, and it's going to pull this, and that's what tightens the brake, okay? So we don't want to fool with this end. This end, I don't see any problem with just kind of cutting it out, getting it out of there. It's easy to get in with a welder. I'm going to weld on a little piece, but, I think even if I didn't weld a piece, if I just left that wide open, I don't think it's going to hurt a thing. All it is a guide to keep that band in place. So I'll be back after I do that, and then I'll start putting this shaft back together. Okay, so as you can see, I did get my drum assembly in there. I did not wind up, cutting away at this, this end over here. I'm all about the easy. I got in there with a grinder. I don't know if you could see how much I took off, but I took about half of it off. Didn't really touch that other end quite so much, but a little bit came off of there too. But I was able to grind away to where that gave that enough clearance to get in there. It's still pretty tight, but the shaft will turn freely, and that's all that really matters. So I also have already installed my 15 spline coupler. That's already on there, and I put back this piece. Remember I showed you earlier in the video, I've got it cut with a couple of bolts where I could take this out. But so this is back in place with the bearing. So now that the drum is in there, I got to slide the shaft in and get it into the disc brake as well as the drum brake, and then it will be pretty much ready to start putting back together. Let me see if I can get an angle here where you can see what I'm doing. So the other thing that I'm going to do is, on this shaft here, I took it to a belt sander and just basically touched the outside of it just a little bit, just to make it a little bit easier to slide it in and out. It was pretty tight. I mean, this is a 1-inch shaft. All this stuff that I bought is all 1-inch, inside diameter. So it should theoretically all fit, but I could tell it felt kind of tight. So I just, like I said, took it to a belt sander, just took the outside edge off a little bit. Makes it a whole lot easier to slide in and out. But now because of that, I took the coating off. What I am going to do before I put all this together is I'm going to use some anti-seize. That's going to coat it all so that it doesn't rust. And hopefully, next time, if I have to take it apart ever again, hopefully it's not going to give me a whole lot of grief. So I'm going to take a little bit. I'll put a little bit on the inside of my drum brake. I will put a little bit on the inside of my disc brake. Okay, let's just set that to the side. And then I'm actually going to put it all on my shaft, again, to try to protect it. And this is going to get kind of messy, so I'll just goop it on there pretty good. Try not to wear too much of it, See, that's covering all that raw steel. So that's going to protect it from rust. It's also going to make it a little bit easier to take apart if I ever need to take it apart. Because remember, that was my original problem. That original shaft was all seized up with rust, and there was just no way to get it out except to cut it out. All right, so I've got this guy coated pretty good now. I'll just take a towel, just kind of wipe it down, get a nice smooth film on there so that it's not all gooped up on there. And like I said, hopefully I don't get too much on me, but we'll see. All right, so I had a little bit of a change of heart because I've got this whole shaft milled out with a keyway. What I'm going to do is just slide this shaft in there, and I'll get this brake up in there. I'll try to get the keyway to the top, but we'll see. So here's what I've decided to do. Let me get this guy. Okay, that's seated inside the coupler. So here's what I've decided to do. Since I've got that extra long, that shaft, that keyway milled all the way in from the machine shop, I just made a long key. And I'm going to slide this key right in through here, through the drum first. I'm going to see if I could just drive it right on through, all the way through the drum. There's the disc. Okay, so there it is. It's on the disc. Now, what I'll be doing is eventually, once I get the brakes on the rotor here, I've got set screws that I could tighten the set screws up. So now that that's on there, like I said, there's set screws on the coupler, there's set screws on the drum and the rotor. All those will have to be tightened up. There's also this little doohickey here, this piece. This is just kind of a stopper. That's going to go in here. Get that in there first. That's so that it can't pull out. The next thing I'm going to do is put the bearing on there and then eventually the hub. So I'll be back in a minute after I get a little more done. Okay, so again, I got the bearing put back on there with the little block stopper back there. I tightened everything down, all the Allen keys. I did want to show you how to get your emergency brake cable back on. So you slide it through, if I could get it through, slide it through this first one. This one's just stationary. It doesn't do anything but sit there. And then what you want to do is get this one in through this second one. Should be able to get it to come out the other side. There's a little Allen key inside here that tightens it and loosens it. Can't remember what size. I might have to go up or down a size. There it goes. I'm going to loosen this out a little bit more. So the goal is to get this cable to pass through the other side, and then you tighten down on that Allen key set screw so that your cable, when you pull on it, will have some tension on this brake. You get the idea. I'm going to fight with this for a little bit, and when I come back, we'll put the brake back on it and then put the hub on it. One more thing before I put this brake back on here. You may notice if you're looking at this brake, this is not the factory original brake of what you would see on your Haul Master. It was made by a company called Tolomatic, and I tracked them down. It was very, very difficult to get a hold of, but I ended up, as you can see, I kind of manufactured a little aftermarket ability to just mount a basic, like a go-kart brake to this. So that's what I've done here. If you get into that same situation, that may give you an idea of what you could do with yours. So I've got the disc caliper set on the rotor. This is the brake assembly. This is how it mounts on there. This is fortunately one of the things that they actually made life easy. It comes apart by this big angle iron, and it's just held in by 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can't really see them. They're on the back side of this. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt this up. We'll put the hub on, and then I'll show you how to put the clutch on, the primary drive clutch, and then this will be done. Okay, so the trick is to get the keyway in the hub first and then drive it on as one. There it is. And we'll just put the bolt on, and I'll show you how to do the primary drive. So if I remember right, the last time I took this primary drive clutch off, it was pretty easy. So let's see if this is going to give me any grief. So basically, take your bolt out of the center. And then it should work itself. There you go. Yep. Work itself right loose. You come on off of it. Take the belt right off. I was going to put some never sees on this, but honestly, I don't think I need to. It's been pretty easy coming off and on. So there's the new one. Just slide the belt on first and rotate it till you find the keyway. Get the bolt started. And then that's all there is to it. So I've got the new primary drive on. Looking forward to starting it up and testing it out. I've got a old battery in there. You can see it there. I'm going to change out the battery first, and then I'll start it up and see how it goes. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out my other channel at Rumble, which is Bible Study with Derek. Here on YouTube, I offer tips and life hacks to try to help people. But on my other channel, Bible Study with Derek over at Rumble, I do a Bible study, which is what we all really need to help us get through this life. So make sure to check it out. I'll put the link below. If this video has been helpful, make sure to like it and help me out with the algorithm. And also make sure to subscribe and share any videos that have been helpful to you or a blessing to you. Thanks again for watching.